Well, to our fellow Americans, brave warriors, and steadfast allies, we said it would not be a fair fight, and it has not been. That the United States is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military in a way the world has never seen before.
This is gritty and tireless work, and I cannot begin to explain how incredibly proud I am of the extraordinary courage, tenacity, and grit and professionalism within the joint force. No drama, no hesitation in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night.
We will stop at nothing to win.
The Middle East is on fire, and today, exactly 1 month into the war, it just got worse. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have launched ballistic missiles at Israel for the very first time since this war began. Israeli air defenses intercepted the missile, but sirens blared across the Negev desert and the southern city of Beersheba. The Houthis say they fired a barrage targeting sensitive Israeli military sites, and they say the attacks will not stop. This is a war that started on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated operation known as Operation Epic Fury, striking Iranian command and control facilities, nuclear sites, air defense systems, missile launch sites, and military airfields across the country. The scale was staggering. The Israeli Defense Forces say they have dropped more than 12,000 bombs across Iran, 3,600 on Tehran alone. U.S. Central Command says it has struck more than 9,000 targets inside Iran. To put that in perspective, that is more targets struck in 1 month than during the entire first year of the Iraq War. Iran hit back hard. Missiles flew toward Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical oil shipping lanes on the planet, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil passes every single day, was effectively shut down by Iran. Tankers stopped moving, insurance companies pulled coverage, energy prices spiked globally overnight. And now, with the Houthis involved, the Red Sea is under threat too. A Chatham House expert described it simply: "We already have a nightmare, and this would make it worse." Let's go back to the beginning, because to understand how we got here, you need to understand what Iran has been building for decades. Iran's nuclear program has been a source of global tension since the early 2000s. Multiple rounds of international sanctions, secret sabotage operations, assassinations of nuclear scientists, a cyber attack that destroyed centrifuges. None of it permanently stopped Iran's progress. By early 2026, intelligence agencies assessed that Iran was weeks away from assembling its first nuclear weapon. That assessment changed everything in Washington and Tel Aviv. On February 28th, in the early hours of the morning, the skies over Tehran lit up. Israel's long-range strike aircraft, refueled mid-air over the Mediterranean, arrived first. Within minutes, American B-2 stealth bombers released bunker-buster bombs on Iran's most hardened underground nuclear facilities. The operation had been planned for months. The goal was not just to demanage, but to destroy. Iran's supreme leader went into a secure bunker. State television went dark for 6 hours. When it came back on, Iranian state media called it an act of war against the entire Muslim world. The human cost inside Iran is devastating. According to the U.S.-based human rights activists news agency, at least 1,464 civilians have been killed in the first month, including 217 children. Strikes hit civilian neighborhoods, police stations, and residential areas near military targets. Residents in Tehran told the BBC there were no public shelters, no government evacuation plan, no official guidance. People were left on their own, hiding in basements, driving their families out the city in the middle of the night, not knowing where the next bomb would fall. The Iranian government has not publicly released any civil defense protocols. Strikes have hit police stations, Basij militia headquarters, military universities, IRGC compounds, and ammunition depots, many of which located inside dense urban neighborhoods. Critics argue that the targeting strategy, while aimed at military infrastructure, has inevitably caused mass civilian suffering. And yet, even Iranians who had spent years protesting against their own regime told BBC reporters that the strikes were deepening resentment. "We wanted change," one resident said, "not this." Meanwhile, American forces have not been spared either. At least 15 American soldiers have been killed and more than 313 wounded across the region. Just on Friday, Iran struck the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, a major hub for American operations in the Middle East, injuring at least 12 more American troops and damaging aircraft on the ground. This is no longer a distant war fought by proxy. American men and women are dying. American bases are being struck, and the Pentagon is responding by sending more assets, not pulling back. The USS George H.W. Bush is now sailing toward the Middle East. 3 guided missile destroyers, the USS Donald Cook, the USS Mason, and the USS Ross, have all departed the United States this week, heading toward the region to join operations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the war would be over in weeks, not months. But the movement of carrier strike groups tells a different story. Iran's nuclear sites were hit directly. Israel struck the Isfahan nuclear complex, home to uranium enrichment centrifuges and weapons-grade material, and Iran's own foreign minister confirmed nuclear facilities were targeted on Friday, March 27th. The South Pars gas field, one of the largest natural gas reserves in the entire world, shared between Iran and Qatar, was also struck in a joint U.S.-Israel operation on March 18th. The economic impact of that single strike could last for years. Iran's energy export capacity has been severely damaged. The conflict has pulled in the entire region like a gravitational force that nothing can escape. In Lebanon, Israel has been striking Hezbollah positions in the south continuously since the start of the war. Hezbollah began firing rockets into northern Israel early on, and Israel responded with massive air and sea bombardment. More than 1 million Lebanese civilians have been displaced. Families are sleeping in cars, in open fields, in makeshift tents, including children and pregnant women. Shelters are overwhelmed. Aid organizations are stretched beyond capacity. 2 Israeli soldiers were seriously injured in ground clashes in southern Lebanon in Friday alone. The IDF says it struck dozens of targets from the air and sea overnight, and as of this morning, the attacks are still ongoing. In Syria, explosions were heard over Damascus as Israeli air defenses intercepted Iranian missiles flying overhead. The Syrian population, already exhausted by years of civil war and economic collapse, is once again living under the sounds of warfare. Kuwait's international airport was hit by drones twice in 1 week. Air defense systems were activated across the UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait simultaneously. 5 Indian nationals were injured in Abu Dhabi when a ballistic missile was intercepted overhead, scattering debris across the Khalifa economic zone. A foreign worker was injured in the port of Salalah in Oman when drones targeted the facility. Saudi Arabia intercepted a ballistic missile targeting Riyadh, the capital city of 7 million people, while also battling multiple drone attacks in the same night. The kingdom has been walking a razor's edge. It hosts American forces, maintains relations with Washington, yet has deep cultural and religious ties to the broader Muslim world that makes full alignment with the U.S.-Israel operation deeply uncomfortable domestically. On the economic front, the damage is accelerating, and markets are beginning to panic. The S&P 500 has now fallen for 4 straight weeks since the war began. The Dow Jones Industrial Average entered correction territory, down 10% from its recent peak. The Nasdaq has shed more than 7% in a single month. On Friday alone, all 3 major indexes dropped more than 1.6%. Oil prices have surged as the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked. Supply chains that run through the region are under severe strain. Airlines have rerouted hundreds of flights. Shipping companies are absorbing enormous extra costs to travel around the Cape of Good Hope instead of through the Red Sea and Suez Canal. The longer this goes on, the deeper the economic wounds become, not just in the Middle East, but in Europe, Asia, and the United States. Inside Iran, the situation for ordinary citizens is unlike anything the modern world has seen. Internet monitoring group NetBlocks reports that Iran has been under a complete digital blackout for 4 full weeks, violating, in their words, Iranians' right to communicate and stay informed. Iran operates a 2-tiered internet system. Members of the regime and government officials have full access to the global internet. Everyone else, the 80 million ordinary citizens of Iran, is restricted to a closed domestic network called the National Information Network. In practice, during the war, even that has been heavily restricted. People cannot call relatives in other cities. They cannot access news from outside Iran. They cannot even confirm whether their loved ones are alive after a strike. The Iranian government imposed a similar blackout in January of this year during a wave of national protests. Critics say the blackout is a deliberate tool of control, used to prevent the population from organizing, communicating, or accessing outside perspectives on the war. There are signs that diplomacy is being attempted, though whether it can succeed is deeply uncertain. Pakistan has announced